evening, everybody. So let's start with our motivation. And since today is the anniversary of the Buddha turning the Dharma wheel, let's really focus on the Buddha's kindness in explaining the teachings, making the teachings available to limited beings like us who have small minds, who find the Dharma difficult to understand. And his tremendous kindness in giving those teachings, and the kindness of all of the 2,600 years of practitioners who have listened to the teachings, studied them, thought about them, put them into practice, meditated on them, and then taught them. And so because of this whole chain of kind beings who exerted themselves in the Dharma, we're able to come along today and encounter the teachings. So feel their kindness, but also feel some responsibility for continuing the teachings so that people in the future can have contact with them, can learn them. So instead of just thinking about ourselves, oh, how fortunate I am to have met the Dharma, to really think about all the other beings who will come along afterwards or after us. And may we do something that through our actions, through our practice, to do something that preserves the Buddha's teachings so that the people who come after us can also benefit from them. And that we have a responsibility to do that. Our lives aren't just about what I can get, what I can take, but our lives are about what I can give. And so in this way, to develop a proper motivation for listening to the teachings that includes the aspiration to benefit all living beings by progressing along the path ourselves. So this thing of having some responsibility ourselves to ensure that the Dharma continues in some way or another, in other words, to contribute in a way that we're capable of. Clearly we can't contribute in a way that we're not capable of, but to find a way that we're capable of contributing to the sustaining of the Buddha's teachings. This became very clear to me when I took Bhikshuni ordination, the full ordination. Before that time, no clue, Before that time, my mind was very much focused on what kind of teachings could I get, what was good for my practice, all these kinds of things about what the Dharma is going to do for me. When can I go on retreat? When can I do this and that? Who is disturbing my practice because they're breathing too loud in the hall, or they're clicking their mala, or, it was all about me. And when I took full ordination, there was a huge shift in my mind. And I realized it's not about me. Yeah, it is not about me. It's about sentient beings. It's about the Buddha's teachings. It's about helping sentient beings to connect to the Buddha's teachings. And therefore, you know, because it came so clear to me when I took the full ordination, because it's difficult for women practicing in the Tibetan tradition to take that ordination, because it doesn't exist in the Tibetan tradition. We have to go to Taiwan, and it's a different language, different culture, etc. But you know, I had this clear feeling when I was there of like, wow, because there were over 500 of us taking ordination at the same time, that, boy, there's a lot of people who've done a lot of work to make this ordination ceremony possible. And not only the people who did the physical labor and the immediate things that it takes to do the ceremony, but the fact that there was 2,600 years of practitioners who were the principal ones who made the ceremony possible. Because if they had not received the precepts and kept them and taught them and given them to others, then, you know, how would some foolish girl from Southern California be able to, you know, receive these precepts? It'd be totally impossible. So, you know, just this feeling of there's this huge wave of energy coming from the Buddha down to the present day, to which every single practitioner has contributed in one way or another, not just the lineage lamas, but so many people who practice in all the different ways, and the supporters of the Dharma and so on, that it was because of all those people for 26 centuries that I was able to receive this ordination that for me was really quite life-transforming. And so that made me kind of wake up. You know, one of the ways it was life-transforming is it made me wake up and realize that, hey, you know, it's not about me. I shouldn't take this for granted, and I have some responsibility to keep the teachings alive for future generations, to repay the kindness of people who kept the teachings alive so that I could meet them. I guess you call that paying it forward. Yeah, but that came so clear. And so on a day like today, when we're celebrating the fact that the Buddha gave his first teachings, we also have to think of the kindness of 26 centuries of people who practiced them and supported them, so that we can just magically appear here today and hear the teachings. Because isn't it kind of magic? You know, when you think about your background, where you grew up, and what you experienced, and what you learned from society about how you were supposed to be and what you were supposed to think, isn't it kind of miraculous that we even took an interest in the Dharma? Yeah? I mean, when I was little, nobody talked to me about Buddhism, and nobody talked to me about the emptiness of inherent existence, or about impermanence, or about overcoming desire, or about generating bodhicitta, or, you know, any of these things. You know, I was raised on Mickey Mouse. Yeah, through and through. M-I-C-K-E-Y. You know? That's how I was raised. I mean, weren't you raised on Mickey Mouse? Yeah? The closest we got to compassion was Bambi. Yeah? So how in the world are we able to kind of stumble into the teachings now? You know? when they've existed in Asia for century after century. How did we encounter the teachings here? And how did we, you know, good Musketeers, you know, have even the interest in learning the teachings? You know, when you think about it, it's totally nuts. You know? My parents agree. It's totally nuts. What you're doing is nuts. It makes absolutely no sense. Yeah? Because the only way you can explain it is karma, you know? And the kindness of others who encouraged us and sustained the teachings and so on. And so, you know, for us to pay it forward for other beings, considering that some of those other beings we're paying it forward to might just be our own future lives. Yeah? Alex Berzin is a good friend of mine, and he told me he has this huge website. He told me one of the reasons he did the website is because he wants to be able to meet the teachings in the future his future life. You know? So making the website now so he can remember the URL and the bardo and look, you know, come out of the womb and tell his mom to open the browser to Berzin archives. Yeah. Okay. So really, you know, to see the kindness around us, and to have a wish ourselves to contribute to that, you know, because I think that all of us, you know, we want to be part of something bigger than ourselves. You know, I think that's why people join Al-Qaeda. Yeah, they want to be part of something bigger than themselves, some movement, you know, and so that's what they hear about. Yeah, or that's why you join the Democratic Party or the Republican Party. You know, you want to do something that's significant, that's bigger than yourself. Yeah. And so I ask myself sometimes, it's like, well, why wasn't I born, you know, in one of those countries and grow up and join Al-Qaeda? Yeah? Why wasn't I born there? Why was I born in this weird planet? You know, I was born in Chicago and grew up in Southern California. Why was I born there? And you know, what would have happened to me if I had been born in Saudi Arabia? Or in Egypt? Or in Gaza? Yeah? What kind of person would I be? What kind of opportunities would I have? Yeah? So it really is almost miraculous. Yeah. Except that it came about due to causes and conditions and due to the kindness of others. Yeah. So when we have that feeling, then we really treasure the teachings. We really treasure our opportunity. And we don't just take it for granted. And then that, in turn, gives us a lot of energy in our practice. Yeah. Because otherwise it's like, oh, okay, there's this retreat, there's this. Maybe, how do I feel? Yeah. And we're not going to get anywhere in our Dharma practice with that level of motivation. You know, that's not going to make it. And today Dagmala mentioned the three kinds of faith. She didn't translate the terms, but she mentioned them. So there's different translations, but one is admiring faith, where you look at the three jewels and admire their qualities. A second is aspiring faith, where you aspire to become like the three jewels. And the third one is convictional faith, that comes about through understanding the Dharma and having conviction in it. And, you know, different people have different levels of these three different kinds of faith. So it's better that we don't compare ourselves to other people. I used to compare myself to other people a lot regarding this, and it just seemed like I don't have any faith at all. You know, because all I did was question this and question that. Yeah. I thought, oh, all these other people, they're going around, oh, the guru is the Buddha. And I'm going, yeah, my guru has some good qualities, but what does it mean? And is that teaching suitable for me? You know? And other people, you know, are going around like, oh, the Dharma is so wonderful. It's just emptiness and bliss, and oh, this is so great. And I'm going like, what does it mean, emptiness? And I have no clue what bliss means. Absolutely no clue. My teacher's leading meditations, and he says, experience great bliss. And I have no idea what great bliss is. Yeah? And then he says, unite that great bliss with emptiness. I'm going, huh? Yeah? And so I used to think, boy, you know, I'm really a loser in terms of this. You know, no faith at all. Yeah, and I thought, but you know, you can't make yourself believe something. Yeah, like she was saying this morning, you can't make somebody become a Buddhist, and you can't make yourself believe things. You know, they either make sense to you or they don't, or you're curious and you can continue to investigate, or you just take it because somebody you admire said so. You know, people have different criteria for what they're going to believe. Yeah, and it was so sweet this afternoon hearing Dagmala you know, refer to all these stories that the Tibetans heard, because, you know, I studied in the Tibetan community, so I've heard many of these stories. And it's like, you know, if stories of miracles were what made me believe in religion, there would have been no reason for me to become Buddhist. Because the religion I grew up with had enough miraculous stuff going on in it. You know, if it was just stories of miraculous events that were going to give me faith and conviction and connection, hey, you know, the parting of the Red Sea and everybody going through, that's a pretty good one, isn't it? You know, what kind of miracle is that? And the Bible's filled with all sorts of stuff. Yeah. That never spoke to my heart. Yeah, but if that was the kind of thing that gave me faith, I wouldn't become a Buddhist, because I would have been satisfied with the stories I heard already. Yeah. They're pretty amazing stories. But, you know, for me, I was always thinking, what's the meaning of my life? And why am I here? And, you know, what is reality? Do you remember that? What was it? Hair? Mm-hmm. Yeah. What is reality? But I mean, yeah, I wanted to know. So, yeah. So there's different people who generate faith in different kinds of ways. But my teachers always emphasize that if your faith is based on reason, it's going to be a lot more stable. Because if it's not based on reason, then when somebody else comes along and tells you something else, because your faith is only on the level of emotion or superficiality, then you start believing what the other person said, because it really sounds kind of good, doesn't it? Yeah. I mean, what sounds better to you? The Buddha walking 7 steps out of he was born from his mother's side, or Jesus, you know, Immaculate Conception, or, you know? So, great stories, but somehow neither of them kind of do it for me in terms of answering what my spiritual questions are. So, yeah, to really try and think deeply about the teachings, use reasoning, ask ourselves, you know, does this make sense? Does it work when I practice it? You know, because if we really examine this way, then I think our faith will be quite stable. I remember when I was studying Madhyamika Avatara, Chandrakirti's text, and with Geshe Sonam Rinchen, and you know, he was explaining to us kind of what these non-Buddhists believe, and we were all kind of, who would believe something like that? It doesn't make any sense. And he would say, you be careful, because you have so little understanding that if pandits from that tradition came here and started teaching you, you would believe. Okay. Yeah, get over my arrogance. Yeah, try and really apply myself, not be so arrogant to think that, you know, I'm not susceptible to believing in wrong views. So anyway, wrong views are what Aryadeva's trying to help us overcome by teaching the 400. We're in the middle of the text. It has 400 stanzas. We're on 263. So you're coming in, some of you, in the middle of the text. We're talking about refuting truly existent functional phenomena. And you might go, what? Truly existent? And what's a functional phenomenon? What are you refuting them for? Yeah. So there's a lot of vocabulary to learn and different concepts to become familiar with. So whatever you get out of it today, very good. And then, you know what, plant seeds, and in the future you can maybe learn some more about some of these ideas and some of these words. Okay, so we were in particular in this chapter refuting truly existent time. Okay? So true existence, or inherent existence, existing by its own characteristics, what that means is a mode of existence in which something does not depend on anything else. Okay? Doesn't depend on causes and conditions, doesn't depend on parts, doesn't depend on a mind conceiving and labeling it, but self-enclosed things that have their own essence. Okay? Now, the thing is that although on one level we could say, well, of course all these things depend on causes and conditions. I mean, the cup and the glasses and the telephone and the clock and the recorder, all these things, and you and me, we all depend on causes and conditions. One part of our mind can say that. But what appears to our sense consciousnesses is objectively existent phenomena. I mean, when you come in this room, don't you perceive it as there are all those people out there? There is that room out there. There are those objects out there. Is that the way things appear to you? Yeah? And do you go along with that appearance? That person made me mad. Yeah? That chocolate has real happiness in it. Everything appears to be objectively existent out there, unrelated to us. And everything appears to be somehow some unitary thing. Like when we look at a person, there's one person. We don't think, oh, there's a body and mind conjoined. Or when we look at a body, we don't say, oh, there's, all these different organs arranged in a certain phenomena. We just look and we think it's like one thing from its own side, independent of everything else. And so just our innate, first of all, the innate way that things appear to us and our innate way of apprehending them is erroneous. But it's been this way since beginningless time. We've never questioned it. So we always think that everything exists the way it appears to us. Yeah, that person is a fantastic person and that person is a jerk. However they appear to me, that's how they exist. Yeah? Even this is too hot, this is too cold, this food is good, this food stinks. It's all out there, and how it's appearing to me must be exactly how it exists. Yeah? And then we quarrel because we all have different ideas. Yeah? Because somebody who thinks that food is good is out of their mind. How dare you serve me this kind of stuff? Awful. From its own side. And then we quarrel because the person behind us thinks it's great. We go, you don't know anything. And they say, neither do you. And then we go, what do you mean I don't know anything? And then pretty soon we're dropping bombs on each other. Yeah, because we just have this vision that everything is solid and concrete as it appears to us. Yeah. But when we if we just stop to question in the slightest bit, we would begin to doubt that. Because if everything existed the way it appeared to us, why don't we all see things the exact same way? Yeah? If this person from their side were a fantastic person, how come everybody doesn't see them as fantastic as I do? They should, because objectively they are like that. Yeah? But if objectively they were like that, then everybody should see them the same way. But the person we think is fantastic, somebody else doesn't want to even talk to. So just that, we can begin to see how subjective things are. And how much we confuse the label with the object. And how much we quarrel over labels. Yeah, we think quarrels are over real substantial issues. Yeah. I remember when my teacher pointed out one day that a court of law, all a court of law, what they're trying to do is they're trying to decide what label to give something. That's it. Yeah? Is this fair or unfair? Are you guilty or innocent? Are you a criminal or are you wrongly accused? Yeah? That all, and courts, things going on in court seem really important, don't they? Yeah, I mean, a person's life can be totally ruined, or totally benefited, depending upon what a court of law decides. But what the decision is basically, what label are we going to give to this thing? And as soon as we give it a label, we're not just giving it a label to identify it, but a whole bunch of meaning that we have associated with this label goes poof, right on top of the other person. Okay, can you see how this happens? Yeah, you just give somebody a certain label, and then all this meaning that wasn't on them before all of a sudden lands on their head. Think of what's the Prince William? What's her last name? Middleton. That's right. Okay, so Kate Middleton. 20 years ago, nobody who knew what Kate Middleton was. Nobody cared, except maybe her sister and her parents, you know? It was like, oh, she's just some British girl. No big deal. Yeah? Now it's like, whoa, she's married to the future king of England. Therefore, she's got to act like this, and she's got to do this, and she cannot do that. She has to wear these clothes. She cannot wear those clothes. And you got to be really careful of where the paparazzi are, you know, and be careful of what they write about you in the newspapers, because all sorts of people are going to believe it. And all of a sudden, you know, your life, which you used to be able to be nobody and have the freedom of being nobody, all of a sudden, all these people's conceptions are on top of your head. Aren't they? You know? You can't even get married in peace. Everybody has an opinion about what your dress looks like and what his uniform looks like. Yeah? Because all this meaning, you know, I mean, they're just human beings, but we've put all this meaning on labels, independence upon labels. Okay? So this is why grasping at true existence causes us problems. Okay? Because we think that whatever we label something and a meaning we associate with that label, we think it actually belongs there and is coming from the side of that person. Yeah? And it's not. It's not. Okay, anyway, I better get back to this verse, huh? So basically, truly existent time is time that exists without depending on any other factor. Yeah. Can the present exist without depending on anything else? Can the future exist without depending on things? Can the past exist without depending on things? No. Everything is, you know, all of those. First of all, just positing future and past, you have to have present. Yeah. Future and past are posited in terms of the present. But does that mean the present is really the present? Try and find the present moment. Yeah. We all like to talk. Live in the present. Cherish the present moment. Have you been able to find the present moment? Yeah. Sit there in your meditation, you know, sometime. And, you know, you have this, be in the present, live in the present. The present moment is so precious. And then sit there, and what is the present moment? Yeah. See if you can identify what the present moment is. It's very interesting. Very interesting. What's the future moment? What's the past moment? And was there something that was really a present moment, and then that same moment, without changing, became a past moment? Yeah. Just sit there. Very interesting to do that. Yeah. I want to live in the present. Where in the world is the present? And who is the I that wants to live in it? I want to live in the present. Who? Who wants to live in the present? You know, as my mother used to say, who do you think you are, young lady? Always had the young lady at the end. But who do we think we are? Who is it that's going to live in the present moment? You got me. So, verse 263. If they are impermanent, how can it be said effects exist? That which has a beginning and end is called impermanent in the world. Okay. So if something is impermanent, meaning it's changing moment by moment due to causes and conditions, then it is contradictory for that impermanent thing to exist prior to the time that it was produced. Okay? So something is a future object. A future object is something that has not yet arisen, but whose causes exist. Yeah. So if something is impermanent, changing moment by moment, it's impossible that it already existed before it arose. Because this person is thinking future things exist substantially. Okay? So there's the future thing. Yeah, we're still on tomorrow's cake. Yeah, for 2 weeks we've been on tomorrow's cake and we haven't seen it yet. Okay? There's tomorrow's cake that already exists somewhere in the ether, and it's ready to just kind of, it's like on a conveyor belt from the future, and then it's going to go click and land into the present moment. Now, do you have that idea sometimes about the future? There's that thing, it's already there. Here's the present moment, and it's just kind of getting closer, 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 you know, and you couldn't see it before even though it was there, and then boom, in the present, there it is. Is that possible? Why not? Why isn't that possible? Huh? Yeah, it can't exist before it exists. Yeah, and it couldn't be an impermanent thing that comes into existence if it already existed before it arose. Okay?
Aryadeva, when you say that it doesn't, it said that the future object doesn't exist but its causes exist?
Yeah.
How come are all the causes, once again, then I go right to all the causes are then floating around somewhere.
Yeah,
that may not actually be awesome.
yeah, but the causes are not concrete either.
That's where we get.
Yeah, yeah, because you're thinking, okay, the future cake, okay, maybe there's not really a cake there, but there's flour and butter and sugar and chocolate chips and bananas, and it's all sitting there on a counter somewhere in the future. And then it's going to chug along, and as it's getting, you know, in about like an hour before the present, then all those things are going to get mixed together into batter and then get put in the oven, and then it's going to kind of, you know, get closer, 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 and the present moment, wham, there's the cake. No.
But isn't also the person supposed to be part of the substantial causes for that future cake also?
No, the person is a cooperative condition.
Okay, it's not one of the substantial.
No, because substantial causes are the actual things that become. They're the principal thing that becomes that. So the substantial cause of the cake would probably be flour.
Which does conventionally exist someplace. I don't understand the difference on how the future object doesn't exist, but the causes do. I can't see how those, I don't see the causes existing either if the future object doesn't.
Okay, it just means that the causes, when we say the causes exist, it doesn't mean the causes are substantially existent and they're there. It means that that object has causes which are within the realm of possibility. Okay?
So the causes, so we can say the causes of the future cake exist, but they are not the causes of the future cake until the future cake comes into existence. Right?
Okay.
Because the effect is dependent on the cause, and the cause is dependent on the effect.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so that's also it. So we're talking about it as...
Yeah, the point is that these causes are not substantially existent, that they're dependent on other factors. Okay?
But they exist conventionally.
Yeah, but there's no stick of future butter sitting out there waiting to be made into a cake.
The eggs are supposed to win the cake, so you have that. She's not cooperating.
She's an uncooperative cause.
So when you said that those parts, the causes are, you said that they have the possibility or they have the capacity to bring this cake into...
Right. It doesn't mean, you know, that the butter is already made.
Right.
Yeah, because maybe they're still making the butter. But, you know, these causes are within the realm of possibility. So we're not talking about producing the horns of a donkey, okay, or the mustache on a turtle. Okay, that's what we're getting at. Yeah, it doesn't mean those. Yeah, because what you're thinking is that then the causes are future objects, but they've already come into existence.
Right. And they're just waiting for that future cake, all of themselves to sort of come up with this little cooperative condition of somebody putting them together.
Right.
And then the future cake.
Yeah, but it's not like that. Okay, it's not like all these things are substantially existent out there. Okay, but you see how our mind wants to make them that way?
That's helpful because it makes me think of like the future Buddhahood.
Mm-hmm.
If the way you define this, it means that how you could get stuck in the idea that you already have that Buddha within you. Because these things are all the causes are substantially existent.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's really, I don't see that. I don't see that the qualities I'm cultivating right now are substantially existent, but I see them as part of the progressive movement of that future Buddhahood. But I don't see them as something, I don't see them as substantial, or else I would be, why would I be bothering to cultivate them if I could solve them?
And that's her point. That's her point, is when we say you are already Buddha, we have the idea, there's my future Buddha sitting out there somewhere. And if that were so, then we wouldn't need to create the causes. Okay?
The causes aren't just sitting in our mind waiting until they all collectively.
No. No.
It is more like a potential. The future cake is really a potential.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's the whole idea. It's not a substantially existent cake. Yeah. The future cake is the cake that has not yet arisen, but, you know, has the potential to arise because its causes are within the realm of possibility. But there's no cake sitting out there in the future. Okay?
What about the ends that give us sugar?
Well, that's the same. Today's sugar, yeah, is not the same as the sugar that's going to be used to make the cake tomorrow. Because today's sugar and tomorrow's sugar are different. Okay? So it's not like today's sugar, you know, here's the sugar, and it's here today, but it's also sitting out in the future, because that exact same sugar that hasn't changed one iota, that's permanent, is going to be used to make the cake. No. Okay? Yeah.
I apologize if you already covered this in another one, but when this text of writing is talking about the 3 times having only dependence and no independence, it does the same as saying, is there any difference between saying the past and the present and the future have no independence and saying phenomenon and events in the past have no independence?
Okay.
Sometimes I get confused.
Yeah.
Are we talking about past things or the past as like
The time. Actually, that's going to come a little bit later. We're talking about the past. You know, in the past is actually an abstract composite. It's an impermanent phenomena, but it's an abstract composite. Whereas phenomena are, I mean, the telephone's form. It's not an abstract composite. Okay? So, but, you know, what's going to come later is, you know, can you see time apart from the phenomena that exist in it? And you can't, can you?
seems so deep? None of our examples do, so.
Yeah. You can't perceive time apart from something that's existing in it. What are you shaking your head for? Yeah. Yeah, because, I mean, otherwise it's like there's future in a box, concrete, there's present, there's past. You see how our mind likes to make everything very concrete? Yeah? Huh? Yeah. Inherent, existent, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's the whole thing. We think that, okay, the sugar changes moment by moment, but there's something that is sugar nonetheless that goes from moment to moment, right? So the sugar is truly existent, even though it changes moment by moment. But if it were truly existent and it was some nature of sugar that went from moment to moment, then that sugar would be permanent. It wouldn't be impermanent. Yeah? And so that's what we're talking about here. Okay? Okay. Gee, we've done one verse. Verse 264. Okay, so this follows the same point. Liberation will occur without exertion. For the liberated there is no future. Or otherwise, if this were so, desire would rise without attachment. Okay, so liberation, if liberation, you know, our future liberation were substantially existent, then it would occur without exertion. Yeah, it would already be there, it would already have attained its entity. We would just be sitting there waiting for it to pop into the present moment. You know, kind of like what do you call them? You know, on a movie projector, you have the little frames, you know, waiting for that frame to go from the future into the present. But that's not how things are. Okay? So, this verse in particular refutes the assertions of the Sautantrika. Yeah? So the Sautantrika they're not the Madhyamika Sautrantikas, say that future functional phenomena, for example, afflictions, do not exist. They're not saying afflictions do not exist, but future functional phenomena, you know, the afflictions as being functional phenomena don't exist because future afflictions are permanent. They're unchanging. Okay, the Sautrantikas are saying that future functional phenomena do not exist. They're not saying that future phenomena are non-existent. Because they're saying that future phenomena are permanent, and permanent, if it's permanent, it can't be a functional phenomena. Okay? So they're saying future functional phenomena do not exist because, yeah. Okay? And so the thing is that if liberation existed out there in the future, yeah, as a permanent functional phenomena, then it would appear without effort to generate the path, because it would be already there. It would have already attained our own entity, its own entity, okay? And so we wouldn't have to cultivate the path that prevents the future afflictions from arising, okay? Everybody would already be liberated. Arhats, for whom there were no future afflictions, and who don't need to exert themselves to prevent future afflictions, because that liberation is out there and it's permanent and it's substantially existent. Okay? Also, they're saying that if future functional phenomena didn't exist, in other words, if future phenomena were permanent, yeah, then and desire were to arise without there being a person, consciousness, latencies of attachment as the basis, then desire would arise in an arhat too. In other words, if, okay, exist, okay, so if there were no future functional phenomena, if everything were permanent, okay, then everything would be independent of all other factors. So if desire could arise, or craving could arise, without there being a person who's having it, without there being a consciousness, you know, who's experiencing it, without there being the latencies of attachment. Here, attachment is referring to view of the personal aggregates, view of the personal identity. Okay, Jigta, our old friend Jigta. Okay, so if that were the case, that all these things could, you know, that desire could arise without depending on other things, then desire could also arise in an arhat's mind, which is impossible. Okay? If the future doesn't exist, then we could not talk of consciousness arising. If consciousness could not arise, then attachment, which means this view of the personal identity, could not arise. And since the view of the personal identity is the basis for desire or craving arising, then craving couldn't arise. And in that case, if craving did arise, it would arise without any causes. Or if it couldn't arise because there were no view of the personal identity, then we would already be arhats. Okay? This is not easy to understand. Why? Because they say that things are substantially existent, okay? So, you know, for their mind, yeah, I mean, how does a Sautrantrika think? You're asking, how does a Sautrantrika think? Why do they say that those things are permanent, okay? Because if they weren't permanent, they would be functioning things. And functioning things already have their own identity, have already attained their own entity. Because remember, according to Sautrantrika, okay, impermanent and functioning thing are synonymous. So permanent is the opposite of that. If it's going to be a functioning thing, it's already attained its entity, which means it exists now. So you can't say future phenomena exists now. So you have to say they're permanent. Yeah? Okay, this is my way of, if I were a Sautrantrika, this is, you know, how I'm thinking. Yeah, you might ask a real Sautrantrika. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Is this kind of like, it seems to me it's kind of like the fate argument. Is fate real or doesn't it not? Like, are you fated to do this, or the fated to do that? It's kind of set in stone. Is that kind of right?
There's an element of that, yeah. Yeah, because we usually see fate as something that's already out there, existing in the ether, but hasn't come into.
Fated to be a rich man, so I can sit
right
here and want to see what happens.
Yeah.
I'll win the lottery or something.
Yeah. There's this one school that we'll come to soon. It's called the Samkhyas, and they say that the result exists in the cause, but it just hasn't been made manifest. And when we believe in fate and predetermination, it's very similar to that. It's like the future's already there in the cause, it's just waiting to appear. Yeah? And it can't change because it's not influenced by anything else. It has some kind of inherent existence. Okay, let's try and listen a little bit, because if you ask questions without listening, yeah, it might help to listen a bit. Okay. Okay, so if, like the Sautrantrikas, you assert that your future suffering exists as a truly existent, permanent, static, metaphysical entity, got the picture? Yeah? That sentence. Okay. Maybe we would say, if you assert that your future okay, I see what he's saying. If you assert that your future suffering existed as a truly existent, permanent, static, metaphysical entity in the future, then, and if you're like a Sautrantrika and say that, then you could easily say you would already be liberated, because there would be no need for Dharma practice, since that metaphysical, static suffering in the future could never become present suffering. Okay? So what it's coming down to is you have to say future suffering is impermanent. You have to say it's not inherently existent, because if it were permanent, if it were substantially existent, then it could never come into being, in which case we would already be arhats. Okay? Then, verse 265. For those who assert effects exist, and for those who assert effects do not exist, adornments like pillars and so forth for a home are purposeless. Okay? So this verse is about refuting by examining whether the effect exists or not. Okay, so here's the Samkhyas. So the Samkhyas say that since what is non-existent cannot arise, and since the result is present in the cause in a potential form, the fallacy that anything arises from anything doesn't occur. Okay? because part of the problem, is that people can say, well, anything arises from anything unless it's substantially existent. So they're saying, well, we get around that because the cause already the result already exists in the cause. It's predetermined. It's there already. It just needs to manifest. So we don't have the problem of saying that anything that can be produced from anything. Okay, so some Vaibhasikas say that the 3 times are substantially existent and effects exist prior to their arising. Okay, which also doesn't make sense. How can an effect exist before it came into existence? Okay, the Sautantrikas, etc., say that although things are truly existent, future effects are permanent and so kind of non-existent. Okay, so what it's saying in relating to the verse says the first line, for those who assert effects exist, which are the Samkhyas, because they say that the effects exist already in the cause, and for those who assert the effects do not exist. Okay, in other words, like the Sautantrikas who say that they're permanent. Yeah, so for all of these people, because they're on 2 extremes, right? One says the effects already exist, one says forget it. Yeah, thus for both of them, adornments for a future house are useful, since according to some of them, it exists from the outset, and according to others, the future house is non-existent, like the child of a barren woman. Okay? So for both of them, going and thinking about how to furnish the house would be useless, because for some of them, the furnishings already exist in the house, and that exists in the building material. We should tell our contractor this. It sounds really good. Yeah. Save a lot of energy. You wouldn't have to build the whole thing. Just bring the material here, and then the results should appear out of the cause. Yeah. Or if you say that the result don't exist, because it's permanent, then there's no chance of it coming into existence at all, in which case you don't need to decorate the house. Okay, so for proponents of dependent arising free from inherent existence, are your ears perking up? This is talking about us, or who we like to think is us, because this is the right view, and we want to have the right view. Okay, so for those who are proponents of dependent arising free from inherent existence, there is no error and everything is properly established and makes sense. Okay, so if you assert dependent arising, you are free from this pressure of having to find the exact object that is the reference of the word. Okay? When you believe in inherent existence, you have to be able to locate the exact thing that the word is referring to. What is the reference of this word? What is this object? And of course, you run into all sorts of problems because you can't actually find what is the thing. Okay? When you assert dependent arising, you don't have to find what is the thing, because your whole thing is, things are in constant flux, causes and conditions, and everything is constantly influencing each other. Things are changing moment to a moment, and there's no substantial entity in any of it. So you don't have to locate the thing that is it. Instead, you just use words as conventional tools, that make it easy to communicate. Okay? In meditative equipoise, learning aryas, so these are people who have seen emptiness directly but who aren't yet Buddhas. They don't perceive dependently arisen phenomena as existent because they only perceive emptiness when they're in meditative equipoise on emptiness, because they're having a direct perception of emptiness. So failure to distinguish between the meditative equipoise that, on emptiness, that does not perceive conventional things as existing. Failure to discriminate that from saying that that things don't exist at all is the source of a big problem, okay? Because then you can't posit conventional reliable cognizers. Okay, so the idea is that the meditative equipoise on emptiness does not perceive conventional objects, even the existence of emptiness, because the existence of emptiness is a conventional thing, because only emptiness is appearing to that mind. So in the same way that my visual consciousness does not ascertain sound, but the fact that my eyes don't ascertain sound does not mean that sound is not existent. In the same way that that meditative equipoise does not ascertain conventional things, that doesn't mean that conventional things are non-existent. It just means that conventional things for learning arhats or aryas are not in the purview of their meditative equipoise on emptiness. Okay? So this is very important to understand, and it relates to understanding the two truths in our system, that conventional things exist, but they're only ascertained by conventional reliable cognizers. An exalted wisdom that directly perceives emptiness does not perceive the objects that are empty. Okay, but that doesn't mean those things are non-existent. Okay, so the idea is just because we don't see something doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And so similar with the future, just because I don't see the future doesn't mean there's no future. Sometimes we want to see the future. When we go for divinations, you go to your Lama for a divination. I want to see the future. I want to know what the inherently existent future is. No. No inherently existent future. Okay. So that's it for tonight. I'm sure Dhammalad's teachings tomorrow will be easier to understand. But it's good to exercise our mind, isn't it? A little bit. Yeah?